Kathy Makolinski is a veterinarian who received her training at Cornell and worked for many years as the Director of Veterinary Services for a limited admission nonprofit shelter. She also has provided spay-neutering services for a mobile unit for shelter animals, public animals, and free-roaming cats. In addition, she has gone on to found 2 local non-for-profit organizations, Operation Pets and also Feral Cat Focus. She currently works for the ASPCA and helps communities implement and enhance high-volume spay-neuter programs. And Kathy Makolinski will provide, I hope, the answers to many of the topics that we've just, that Wayne just raised.
So Canisius College is my alma mater, so it does give me great honor to be back here today to discuss this topic with you. And thank you, Dr. Noonan, for encouraging me to become a veterinarian and also for inspiring my appreciation for scientific inquiry. And where will we go today? First, we're going to discuss some definitions. These have been brought up already, but we'll go into them in a little bit different way. We're going to discuss some strategies that have been attempted to control cat populations. We're going to discuss universal concerns voiced by people regarding which strategy they prefer. And we're going to discuss also some topics that are coming down in research that could help us answer these questions. Okay, so what is a feral cat? Generally, a cat that has never been socialized with humans, or a cat that's strayed from home and been abandoned and has been outdoors for so long that they've reverted to a wild state, or a cat that's been born outside and has not had the contact with humans. The adults typically cannot be handled. It's usually very difficult to tame them, and they're ill-suited to living in a home environment. And generally speaking, kittens up to 7 weeks of age may be able to be socialized and adopted into homes. For those of us in the audience who have done this in the past, 7 weeks is pretty early, and sometimes kittens past that age can be, but it becomes increasingly more difficult to do that with older kittens. A stray cat tends to be accustomed to human contact or even solicit human contact. They may have been abandoned or become lost, but oftentimes they can be resocialized and placed for adoption. And this has been presented before today, but the point that I want to make here is that when we try to categorize cats, we often start with domestic cats. We break that down into indoor-only pets and free-roaming cats. And the category of free-roaming cats generally includes those cats who are feral or those cats who spend some of their time outside. And there's even been a growing movement to call these cats community cats, because that is where they choose to make their home, and the community is responsible for taking care of them. So what are our options for handling feral cat populations? And the management methods that have been utilized, we're going to go through each of these in greater detail, but they're listed here for you. And the first one is to do nothing. Very common method. I put no upfront costs, because communities who do nothing tend to find themselves in a position later on down the line where they do want to start doing something about the overwhelming problem, and that's where they tend to start incurring the costs. And as we can see, it doesn't do anything to solve the problem. Then we have biological control, hunting, and poisoning, and I thought we would go through an example of this. This is the Marion Island eradication effort. And this is a pretty small island, 12 by 18 mile island, located in the southeast of South Africa. And in 1949, there were some scientists there who brought in cats for mouse control. In 1975, they estimated that the cat population was about 2,500, and they were preying on nesting seabirds, and that was considered to be, a difficult situation that they wanted to stop. In 1977, they introduced panleukopenia, and it was introduced and killed about 54% of the cats over about an 18-month period of time. And following that, they utilized trapping, hunting, poisoning, and dogs were used to kill cats. In 1991, they were pretty satisfied that there were no more cats on the island. So that just shows us that in 14 years of crude and cruel methods that they used, that the cats were exterminated. But it does beg the question, If on such a small island it took these types of methods in that period of time, how can we expect to use any of these sorts of methods on bigger islands or even on mainland populations? That it would be very difficult to eradicate the cats by using these methods. So another option is to trap and take the cats to animal shelters, and that's often done by people who feel badly for the cats because they believe the cats can be adopted from the shelter. They think the cat will have a better chance that way. And unfortunately, this is a national statistic. 70% of cats that are brought to shelters in the US are euthanized. And that includes socialized cats who we just can't find enough homes for. So the cats who are unsociable, truly feral cats, do not make good adoption candidates. And most oftentimes they're euthanized. And such organizations, we may want to blame them, but those organizations really do not have the time or the resources to attempt to socialize these cats and place them for adoption. Another option is to trap and place in sanctuaries. And this is, like Wayne mentioned, a good option for fragile ecosystems. But in general, to use this across the board would tend to be very costly. If high quality care is provided. It requires land, buildings, staff, maintenance, insurance. And also if they are overcrowded, it can increase the incidence of contagious diseases. And it may be an option also for feral cats who have disabilities. So that's one potential option. Trap and relocate. As we've heard, cats have a strong bond to the location that they inhabit. If for a reason if the cat needs to be moved because something in its environment is of detriment to the cats, or they are in a fragile ecosystem, if it's necessary to do that, it's best to move multiple cats to the new location and to recognize that it is stressful for the cat and also is a very time-consuming process. The cats generally need to be confined with adequate care for 3 to 4 weeks at their new location in order to acclimate them. And some shelters are using this in conjunction with barn cat programs. So if they have a certain population of cats that do require to be moved, they will solicit from their community, they will ask people if they can serve as barn homes for these cats. Trap and euthanize, also discussed. Usually it's in response to nuisance complaints. So when an animal control agency is called out to trap cats that are causing a neighborhood nuisance, it may achieve a temporary decrease in the number of cats. But because they lack resources and cats are very elusive, it's difficult to trap all the cats. So long-term implementation would require allocation of funds and staff that most communities simply can't afford. And caregivers will tend to thwart these efforts. If they know that this trapping effort is for the purpose of euthanasia, they'll do everything in their power to thwart those efforts. And when those cats are taken to shelter facilities, it has an emotional toll on the employees who are tasked with euthanizing those cats. So opponents of trap and euthanize, has that been successful? They say no, it hasn't. Let's try something new. The remaining cats will quickly reproduce to reach the carrying capacity of the environment. That's one reason why it doesn't work. And should we euthanize to prevent suffering that might occur in the future? A lot of times we say those cats aren't having a very good quality of life out there. But do we generally take the philosophy that we're going to gather up all of our wildlife, all of our squirrels and raccoons, and bring them in to be euthanized just because they might be hit by a car next week? So another option, which has been gaining favor, is trap, neuter, vaccinate, return. And I use the term vaccinate in there as from a veterinarian's perspective. It's very important to administer rabies vaccines to this population of animals, not only to protect them, but to protect the humans that they may interact with. And here it's really important to note that we're using, like Wayne said, volunteer manpower to do this. And it's to help the cats that are already out there. It's not to encourage people to abandon their animals. And we do see an initial decrease in the number of cats due to adoption of socialized cats. And then the hope is through attrition of feral cats over time, we'll see a further decrease in the number of cats. And we definitely see fewer complaints due to noise, less odor, less roaming in search of mates, and in some cases, controlled feeding of cats produces less nuisance behavior. And we say, well, what about the welfare of the cats that are out there? And this was an interesting study that looked at population characteristics of feral cats admitted to 7 trap-neuter return programs in the United States. And they found that of the cats that were presented to them, a total of 0.4% of the cats needed to be euthanized due to the presence of debilitating conditions at the time they were taken in. So they found that most of these cats were in decent shape when they were coming in to be neutered. But there are opponents to trap, neuter, vaccinate, return as well. Although they have scientific research which shows the effectiveness of this approach in certain situations, they say that it's not successful in all situations. And the programs may not differentiate between truly feral cats and cats who would become socialized. And they still believe that many outdoor cats do live short, brutal lives. So the universal concerns that we find, regardless on which side of the argument people fall, is that there is cat predation on wildlife, especially in fragile ecosystems. We're very concerned about that. That we have the potential for spread of disease to wildlife and humans. We are concerned about the welfare of cats. There's certain legal issues regarding maintenance of cat populations. We have to consider the costs related to program implementation. And it's becoming a big issue recently is how do we measure the impact of these interventions? We're spending a lot of money and a lot of resources on implementation of these programs. We need to make sure that we have a method that's designed to measure the impact of the intervention so that we can tweak the strategies to best serve our purposes. And obviously prevention is key, and that's achieved through public education and through spay-neuter programs for owned cats, and also an effort to keep cats indoors. I had the opportunity to attend the outdoor cat conference that was offered by HSUS, and there was a real positive energy between people who notoriously have been on different sides of the fence regarding this issue. And basically, we came to the conclusion that a one-size-fit-all approach may not be the best answer for all animals involved. We need to implement effective strategies that consider the needs of all animals in particular situations. And that humane solution will entail additional resources, appropriate funding, and monumental collaboration on the parts of everybody who comes to the table who has a concern about this issue. And speaking of research, just a couple of potential game changers that are coming down the line that could really help us in this effort. And the first is a project that the ASPCA is coordinating. It's called Is That Cat Feral? It's a multi-stage research project. And the goal of this is to develop a humane, shelter-friendly method to separate feral cats from frightened sociable cats within a 3-day holding period. So that when cats enter our shelters, and we're not quite sure what their personality is, we will be able to do tests over a period of 3 days and come up with a better idea of is this cat able to be re-socialized and placed into a home through adoption, or is a better alternative for this cat to be neutered and returned to its site of trapping. So you can follow that research project on aspcapro.org. Another really interesting project is a computer simulation model of free-roaming cat populations, and that accounts for a number of variables, but yet tells us how many cats need to be sterilized over what period of time in order to see a decrease in the free-roaming cat population. That's like my last slide. And the very biggest game changer, in my opinion, is the development of non-surgical sterilants and chemical contraceptives. Wouldn't it be great, instead of having to bring these cats in to be spayed and neutered, if we could go out in the field and give them an injection, much like we do a vaccine, and have them be sterilized? That's it. Thank you.